Winter Jam! Oh, I broke my knee. Are you ready for winter camp? It's coming up. It's gonna be the best weeks of your life. Here we go.
Mark your calendars for the 18th, 19th, and 20th.
Yeah, boy!
Early bird prices until Black Friday. Get an extra $50 off, so make sure you sign up before then. And we can't wait to see you there.
We'll see you there.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I hope that you've had a great week so far. Hey, I just want to let you a couple things before we jump into our lesson tonight. Just a couple things. Number one being that next Sunday, which is November 25th, we will not have our small group. So don't show up because we're giving our leaders the night off. It's well deserved for them, and so we're going to give them the night off, and we want you to go spend time with your family during Thanksgiving. The other thing is that the following Sunday, which is December 2nd, we are going to be meeting at the Niwot campus for the gathering. It'll be from 6:30 to 8. We'd love for you to be there. It's going to be a great time. It's going to be awesome. The other thing that I'll let you know of is that this episode of Rocky Students is sponsored by LaCroix. All right, so this is the worst flavor though. Don't drink this one. Go get like cran raspberry or like lemon or lime. Delicious, wonderful. It's awesome. Also, the one more thing before we jump in. I know that some of you are going to make fun of the way I'm sitting right now, which is fine. Okay. Here's the deal. I know I sit this way. Don't be like, hey, you sit funny. I know. I've owned it. I know it. Leave it alone. All right? Just so we're all clear. I sit like a girl. Yes, it's true. All right? But tonight we are jumping into our second video of non-negotiables. We started it 3 weeks ago. And we've just been asking the question, like, man, what does it look like? Like, what is the things that Jesus deems as important, as non-negotiable? What are the things that God has said, hey, these are the things that you have to do as a believer in Jesus? Because ultimately, like, we have to own some of that. Like, we don't always want to make, like, we live in a culture, we don't want to have to force anybody to do something, but at some level, man, we just have to own the fact that God has commanded some things from us. And these are some of the non-negotiables that we think are really, really important. Last week, Billy talked about Job and how the non-negotiable out of Job is that God is good. God is good. Even when we think he is not, he is still good. Our circumstances don't change like God's personality. Like, he is still good. It's a non-negotiable. God is still good. And tonight we're actually going to be jumping into a passage in the book of Hebrews. It's in the New Testament. It's kind of halfway through the New Testament. And we're just chatting about something tonight that I think is really, really important for us to be a part of. And it's the gathering. Now, you hear that and you're probably going, the gathering on Sundays? Like, not Sunday nights, but the gathering as in the Global C church that gathers on every Sunday. On every Sunday. And in fact, we're gonna look at Hebrews right here. In Hebrews, there's what we see right before we get to this passage. What the writer of Hebrews, the author of Hebrews is saying here is, man, life sucks, life is hard, life is crappy, but these are some of the things that you need to do as a believer in Jesus to persevere through the crap of life. That's just what he's writing about. And then we look at verse 24. It's kind of halfway through this specific passage in Hebrews chapter 10. He said, this is one of the ways that you need to persevere through life. And he says, this is what it is. Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. And he's saying here, man, how are we going to encourage and spur one another on? We love each other and we do good works for one another. Like, that's the first thing. And then he goes down one more verse, and this is what he says, and let us not neglect. Let us not neglect our meeting together, as some people do, but encourage one another, especially now. The day of his return is drawing near. And this is what he's saying. One of the most important things you can do as a believer in Jesus is to be around other believers in Jesus. Like, be present on Sunday, because it's really one of the most important things that we can do as a believer in Jesus. And in fact, our lives are not meant to be lived alone. They're not. If you go all the way back to Genesis, at the very, very beginning of the Bible, when God is creating everything, we see this to be true. Actually, I'm gonna take a quick drink of my LaCroix here. Again, I hate this flavor, but whatever. No LaCroix, Or like some LaCroix is better than no LaCroix, so. Official drink of pastors, by the way. Anyways, Genesis. One of the most, like at the very, very beginning of the Bible, in Genesis chapter 2. In Genesis chapter 2, like God has created all these things. And he said, this is good. He's created the earth. He's created the grass, the trees, the animals. He says, this is good. And then he creates man and he says, this is very good. And then we go one more chapter over to Genesis chapter 2. And he goes, man is not meant to live alone. Wow. He's not meant to live alone. We will create a helper for him, is what God says in Genesis. So he creates Eve, a woman, a helper. Through the story of the Bible, we see that it's incredibly important to be in a community of believers with one another. And in fact, the Acts, like the story of the church, like as being established as the church, as one of the most amazing books, because you see how the church interacts with one another. They love each other. They live with one another. And being in a community of believers is one of the most important things that we can do as being a believer in Jesus. It is a non-negotiable for us to be in a community of believers who also believe in Jesus. Like, it's just so important for us. So I challenge you in the upcoming weeks, be at church. That's a really churchy, like weird thing to say, but it's important for us to be around other people. Be at church. Be at church because it's important for us. And some of you may have problems with the church. Man, you've been burned by it. You've been outcast from it. But I want to challenge you, give it a shot because it is so important for us to be there. We're getting ready to break up into our small groups. And I want to encourage you to have these discussions. Like, man, I don't like church. That's okay. This is the place where you get to voice that and say that. But it is, man, for our leaders and our people, it is important for us to be together. We're going to get ready to jump into small groups. And just a quick reminder, we will not see you guys next week, but we will be meeting on December 2nd from 6:30 to 8 at Niwot for the gathering. And as we break up, just remember, life is not meant to be lived alone.